The stars around Nexus Station burned cold and bright against the endless black of space. The massive diplomatic hub spun slowly in orbit around a neutron star, its metal halls buzzing with activity from dozens of alien species. Ships from across the galaxy docked at its ports every day, but today was different. Today, the newcomers were from a world that most civilized beings would call impossible to live on. Commander Thexvar stood at the observation deck, his green-scaled hands pressed against the reinforced glass. His yellow eyes watched the approaching human vessel with growing unease. The ship looked wrong somehow. Where other species built their craft with thick armor and multiple backup systems, this human ship seemed almost fragile. It had clean lines and minimal protection, as if the beings inside did not fear the dangers of space. "Sir," came a voice behind him. Sub-Commander Krixtal, a tall being with 4 arms and blue skin, approached with a data pad. "The human delegation will arrive in 1 hour. Should we prepare the high-security meeting room?" Thexvar turned from the window. His species, the Sethek, had evolved from creatures that spent most of their time hiding from predators. Even after thousands of years of civilization, his instincts still told him when something was dangerous. Right now, those instincts were screaming. "Yes," he said slowly, "but keep it subtle. We do not want to appear hostile. These humans come from what the scouts call a death world. We must be very careful." The reports about Earth had been disturbing. A planet where the weather could kill you in minutes. Oceans filled with creatures that could swallow a shuttle whole. Land covered with predators that hunted in packs. And somehow, impossibly, intelligent life had not just survived there, but thrived enough to reach the stars. The human ship docked with a gentle bump that barely registered on the station's sensors. Thexvar straightened his blue uniform and checked his translator device one more time. First contact with a new species was always delicate, but this felt different. This felt dangerous in ways he could not explain. The airlock hissed open, and the first human stepped through. Captain Hyun-Woo Park was not what Thexvar had expected. He was tall but not massive, with dark hair and calm brown eyes. He wore a simple gray uniform with minimal armor. Most surprising of all, he was smiling. Not the sharp, predatory grin that Thexvar had imagined, but a warm, friendly expression that seemed genuine. "Commander Thexvar." Hyun-Woo extended his hand in what the briefing materials had called a handshake, a human greeting ritual. "I'm Captain Park. Thank you for welcoming us to your station." Thexvar carefully took the offered hand. The human's grip was firm but not threatening. His skin was warm, and Thexvar could feel the steady pulse of blood beneath it. Everything about this human seemed so normal. So harmless. It made the warnings about their homeworld even more confusing. "Welcome to Nexus Station, Captain," Thexvar replied. "We are honored by your presence." 3 more humans followed Hyun-Woo through the airlock. Da-Yoon Kim was a small woman with short black hair and bright eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. She carried several scanning devices and looked excited rather than cautious. Taemin Lee was a quiet man with glasses who kept checking a tablet. So-Ra Choi brought up the rear, a young woman with a cheerful smile who seemed delighted by everything she saw. "This is amazing," Da-Yoon said, looking around the reception area. "The radiation shielding here must be incredible. We could barely detect the neutron star's emissions from inside the station." Thexvar blinked in confusion. You can detect neutron star radiation without instruments?" "Oh, just background levels," Da-Yoon said casually. "Nothing dangerous. We grew up near Earth's magnetic field, so we're used to radiation environments. Thexvar felt his scales shift slightly, an unconscious defensive response. These beings talked about deadly radiation, the way his people discussed a pleasant breeze. As they walked toward the diplomatic quarters, Sora kept pointing at things with obvious enthusiasm. "Are those the Krillian energy flowers?" she asked, gesturing to some bioluminescent plants in wall containers. "They're beautiful. On Earth, we have similar organisms in our deep ocean trenches. Of course, ours live under crushing pressure and near volcanic vents, but the light patterns are remarkably similar." Crushing pressure. Volcanic vents. Thexvar exchanged a worried glance with Crixtal. The humans were describing conditions that would kill most known life forms, as if they were talking about a pleasant garden. "You have organisms that live near volcanic vents?" Crixtal asked carefully. "Oh yes," Sora said brightly. "Tube worms, bacterial mats, all sorts of fascinating life. Some of the bacteria can actually eat sulfur and thrive in temperatures that would boil water. They're quite remarkable. We humans love studying them." Thexvar felt his mouth go dry. These beings not only lived alongside creatures that thrived in lethal conditions, they sought them out for entertainment. They reached the diplomatic meeting room, a spacious area with a large oval table surrounded by chairs, designed for different alien body types. Representatives from a dozen species were already present, all trying to look calm and professional. Thexvar could see the tension in their postures, the way they kept glancing at the humans with barely concealed nervousness. Hyun-Woo seemed completely unaware of the effect his team was having. He smiled and nodded politely as introductions were made, his relaxed manner only making the other delegates more uncomfortable. "Before we begin formal discussions," announced Elder Vex Mirren, the ancient leader of the Trilaxian Republic, "perhaps our human friends could tell us about their homeworld." "We are curious about the conditions that shaped your species." Daun lit up with enthusiasm. "Oh, Earth is wonderful. It's incredibly diverse. We have frozen polar regions, burning deserts, deep ocean trenches, active volcanic zones, and massive storm systems. The biodiversity is amazing." "Storm systems?" asked Ambassador Q-Flick, whose species came from a world with perfectly controlled weather. "Hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards," Taemin said matter-of-factly. "Some of our storms can level entire cities, but they're also essential for our weather patterns. Humans have learned to live with them. Thexvar watched the other delegates' reactions. Several were gripping their chairs tightly. The Pelian representative had gone completely pale. "And the creatures you mentioned," Elder Vex Mirren continued, his voice carefully controlled. "These organisms that live in extreme conditions, are they dangerous?" Sora laughed, a sound that somehow made everyone except the humans flinch slightly. "Oh, some of them can be, but most are perfectly harmless if you know how to handle them. Humans have always lived alongside Earth's wildlife. Many of us keep some of the smaller ones as companions." Companions. The word hung in the air like a threat. "What kind of companions?" Thexvar heard himself ask. "Well," Sora said thoughtfully, "there are cats and dogs, of course, fish, birds, reptiles. Some people keep spiders or snakes. My neighbor back home has a lovely python." The room fell completely silent. Thexvar felt his survival instincts screaming at him to run, but he remained frozen in his chair. These beings kept predators as companions. They shared their living spaces with creatures that could kill them. A python, Elder Vexmiran repeated slowly. And this is normal? Very normal, Hyunwoo said with a smile. Humans have a special relationship with Earth's animals. We find them fascinating and beautiful. It's one of the things we're most proud of about our world. Proud of. They were proud of living with deadly creatures. Thexvar looked around the, table and saw his own shock reflected in every alien face present. As the formal negotiations began, one thought kept running through Thexvar's mind. What kind of species finds beauty in things that could kill them? And what did that say about humans themselves? The meeting continued, but the real revelation had already occurred. The galaxy had just met a species that considered living alongside mortal danger to be not just normal, but something to celebrate. The implications of that were more terrifying than any weapon. 3 days had passed since the first meeting, and the atmosphere on Nexus Station had grown increasingly tense. Word about the human delegation had spread through the diplomatic quarters like wildfire. Whispered conversations stopped when humans walked by. Alien security teams held extra briefings about Deathworlder protocols. Even the station's advanced AI seemed to monitor the humans more closely than other visitors. Thexvar sat in his private office, reading reports from his intelligence team. Each new piece of information about Earth made the situation more confusing and frightening. According to their research, humans regularly swam in bodies of water inhabited by creatures called sharks, predators with rows of razor-sharp teeth. They hiked through forests filled with bears, animals that weighed several times more than a human and could crush bones with their bite. They built homes in areas where the ground itself could shake violently without warning. Most disturbing of all, they did these things voluntarily, for pleasure. A soft chime announced a visitor. "Enter," Thexvar called. Hyunwoo walked in, still wearing that same calm, friendly expression that had unnerved so many delegates. "Commander, I hope I'm not interrupting. I wanted to discuss the next phase of our talks." "Of course, Captain. Please, sit." Thexvar gestured to a chair designed for humanoid species. "How are you finding the station?" "It's impressive," Hyunwoo said, settling into the chair. "The engineering is remarkable. Your people have created something that could house thousands of different species safely. That takes incredible skill." The casual compliment somehow made Thexvar even more nervous. In his experience, apex predators were often charming, right? "Before they struck. We do our best," Thexvar replied carefully. "Now, about these talks. The Council has been discussing your initial presentation, and there are some questions about human capabilities." Hyunwoo leaned forward slightly, showing polite interest. "What kind of questions?" "Well," Thexvar chose his words carefully, "your people come from an environment that most species would consider uninhabitable. The Council is curious about how you developed your technology under such conditions. Perhaps a demonstration of your scientific methods would help us understand." "That's a great idea," Hyunwoo said with enthusiasm that made Thexvar's scales twitch. "Our scientists would love to share their work. Daun has been hoping for a chance to discuss comparative biology, and Sora could show how we study and interact with different life forms. Study and interact with." The phrases sent a chill down Thexvar's spine. These humans actively sought out contact with dangerous organisms for research purposes. "That would be educational," Thexvar managed. The council chamber has been prepared for scientific demonstrations. We have full containment facilities and safety protocols. Containment? Hyun-woo looked puzzled. We won't need much security. So-ra suggested bringing some specimens from our ship to show how humans work with Earth's wildlife. Nothing dangerous, of course. Nothing dangerous according to humans. Thexavar felt his survival instincts screaming warnings, but diplomatic protocol required him to agree. Excellent. The demonstration is scheduled for tomorrow. All council members will be in attendance. After Hyun-woo left, Thexavar immediately contacted his security chief. Double the guard detail for tomorrow's demonstration. Full battle readiness, but keep it discreet. And make sure the emergency evacuation systems are online. Sir, are you expecting trouble from the humans? Thexavar paused. I honestly don't know what to expect. That's what worries me. The next morning, the council chamber buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from 43 different species filled the tiered seating, all trying to look calm and professional while their security details checked and rechecked emergency procedures. The chamber's defensive systems had been quietly activated, though no one wanted to admit they might be needed. Elder Veximiran called the session to order. Today, our human friends will demonstrate their scientific methods. We are eager to learn from their unique perspective. So-ra entered first, pushing a cart loaded with various containers and equipment. Her cheerful smile and obvious excitement made several delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. She was followed by Da-un, who carried additional devices, and Tai-min, who had what appeared to be recording equipment. Thank you all for this opportunity, So-ra began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's speakers. We're thrilled to share some of Earth's amazing biodiversity with you. Humans have always believed that understanding other life forms helps us understand ourselves. Thexavar noticed that his security team had quietly moved closer to the exits. Several delegates had done the same thing. Only the humans seemed completely relaxed. First, Da-un said, activating a holographic display, let me show you Earth's various environments. The hologram shimmered to life, showing a blue and green world that looked deceptively peaceful from space. But as Da-un zoomed in, the reality became clear. Massive storm systems swirled across the surface. Lightning bolts the size of entire cities crackled through the atmosphere. Ocean waves tall as buildings crashed against rocky shores. These hurricanes can have winds over 300 kilometers per hour, Da-un explained casually. The storm surge can flood entire coastal regions. Humans have learned to predict them and either evacuate or ride them out. Ride them out. Ambassador Kuflik made a choking sound. The hologram shifted to show underwater scenes. Creatures with tentacles longer than shuttlecraft drifted through the depths. Schools of fish with razor-sharp teeth moved like silver clouds. Strange, bioluminescent beings that looked more like nightmares than living creatures floated in the darkness. Our oceans are incredibly rich ecosystems, So-ra said with obvious pride. The diversity is stunning. Some of these creatures have been around for millions of years, surviving ice ages and mass extinctions. Humans love exploring these underwater worlds. Love exploring. Thexavar watched a massive creature with too many teeth glide across the hologram and felt his mouth go dry. Now, Tai-min said, let's show you some of the land environments where humans live. The hologram shifted again. Dense forests where the trees were so tall their tops disappeared into mist. Deserts where the ground was hot enough to cook food. Frozen wastelands where the wind could freeze flesh in minutes. Mountains that scraped the sky, their peaks lost in clouds and snow. Humans have built cities in all these environments. Taemin continued. We adapt our technology to work with nature rather than against it. It's one of our fundamental principles. Work with nature. Thexvar looked at the holographic display showing a forest where every shadow could hide a predator and wondered what that really meant. This is all very interesting, Elder Vexmiran said, his voice slightly strained. But perhaps you could show us some actual specimens to demonstrate your research methods? Sora's face lit up with pure joy. Of course. We brought some wonderful examples of Earth life to share with you. She moved to her cart and began unpacking containers. Each one was labeled with symbols that the translation systems couldn't interpret. Thexvar noticed that several security officers had quietly drawn their weapons, though they kept them lowered and hopefully out of sight. We started with some of our gentler species, Sora said, lifting a transparent container. This will give you a good sense of how humans interact with Earth's wildlife. Gentler species. Those two words sent a wave of terror through the assembled delegates. If these were the gentle ones, what were the dangerous creatures like? Sora opened the first container with steady hands and a warm smile. Don't worry, everyone. This little fellow is completely harmless. She reached inside and carefully lifted out what appeared to be a long, flexible creature with scales that caught the light. Its body moved in smooth, flowing curves as it wrapped around her arm. The reaction was immediate and devastating. Thexvar's predator detection instincts exploded into full alert. His vision tunneled, his breathing became rapid and shallow, and every muscle in his body locked up. Around the chamber, similar reactions rippled through the crowd. The Pelian delegate fell out of his chair. 3 security officers raised their weapons before catching themselves. This is just a common garden snake, Sora said cheerfully, apparently oblivious to the panic she had caused. They're found all over Earth, completely non-venomous and very docile. Many human children learn about nature by observing creatures like this one. Human children interacted with these creatures. Thexvar felt his worldview cracking. The snake moved its head, and several more delegates scrambled for the exits. Sora continued to smile as she gently stroked the creature's scales. Snakes are actually quite beautiful when you learn to appreciate them, she continued. They play important roles in Earth's ecosystems. Humans have studied them for thousands of years. These beings had been deliberately seeking out contact with predators since the beginning of their civilization. Now, Sora said, reaching for another container, let me show you something really fascinating. Thexvar realized with growing horror that this was just the beginning. The chamber had fallen into a tense silence. Half the delegates were frozen in their seats, while the other half had quietly moved closer to the exits. Security teams throughout the room stood at ready positions, their weapons powered but not yet aimed. The air itself seemed to vibrate with barely contained fear. Sora, completely unaware of the terror she was causing, continued to hold the snake with gentle confidence. The creature's scales caught the light as it moved, and its forked tongue flicked out to taste the air. To the assembled aliens, it looked like a living weapon designed by evolution to kill efficiently. As you can see, Sora said warmly, snakes are really quite peaceful when handled properly. This little one is probably just curious about all of you. Snakes use their tongues to smell, which is how they learn about their environment. Thexvar watched the creature's tongue dart in and out and fought down the urge to run. Every instinct told him the predator was tasting the air to select its prey. Would anyone like to observe more closely? Sora asked with genuine enthusiasm. The response was immediate. 3 more delegates stood up and headed for the exits. Ambassador Kuflik made a sound like a tea kettle boiling over. One of the younger security officers actually took a step backward before catching himself. "I think we can observe perfectly well from here," Elder Vexmiran managed, his voice carefully controlled. "Of course," Sora said with understanding. "Different species have different comfort levels with wildlife. Humans tend to be very hands-on in our approach to biological study." Hands-on approach. The phrase sent new waves of horror through the audience. These beings made physical contact with dangerous creatures as a standard research method. Sora gently placed the snake back in its container and sealed it. The collective sigh of relief from the audience was audible. But then she reached for the next container and the tension immediately returned. "Now this specimen represents a different type of Earth fauna," she announced cheerfully. "Arthropods are incredibly successful on our world. They've adapted to almost every environment imaginable." Arthropods. Thexvar's translator provided additional information. Creatures with jointed legs and external skeletons. Predatory characteristics. Often venomous. His scales began to shift color. An involuntary stress response. Sora opened the second container and reached inside with the same casual confidence she had shown with the snake. What she pulled out made several aliens gasp audibly. It was dark and hairy, with 8 legs that moved in perfect coordination. Its body was the size of a human hand, and it moved across Sora's palm with fluid grace. To creatures whose ancestors had spent millions of years hiding from such predators, it looked like death incarnate. "This is a Chilean rose tarantula," Sora said with obvious affection. "Isn't she beautiful? Look at those lovely patterns on her abdomen. Beautiful." The human called the nightmare creature beautiful. Thexvar felt his worldview shift again. These beings didn't just tolerate deadly predators. They found them aesthetically pleasing. 3 more delegates left the chamber. One of the security officers quietly called for medical backup. The remaining audience sat in stunned silence, watching a human pet what appeared to be a mobile killing machine. "Tarantulas are actually quite gentle," Sora continued, letting the creature walk along her arm. "They're much more afraid of us than we are of them. Humans keep them as companions because they're fascinating to observe and relatively easy to care for." Companions. They kept these creatures as companions. Thexvar began to understand that the humans weren't demonstrating their ability to contain dangerous life forms. They were showing how they lived alongside them by choice. "The interesting thing about tarantulas," Daun added, pulling up more holographic data, "is how they've adapted to different environments. Some live in deserts, others in rainforests. Some burrow underground, others live in trees. Human researchers have studied them in all these habitats. These humans went into the creatures' natural environments to observe them, voluntarily, for science." Ambassador Krelnoth of the Epsilon Collective finally found his voice. You go into their territory? On purpose?" "Oh, yes," Sora said brightly. "Field research is essential for understanding animal behavior. You can't really know a species unless you observe it in its natural environment. Some of my colleagues spend months in the field studying various creatures. Months in the field with the creatures." Thexvar felt his grip on reality slipping. "Speaking of field research," Taemin said, activating his tablet, "perhaps we should mention some of our aquatic studies." Aquatic studies. Thexvar remembered the holographic images of Earth's oceans filled with massive predators. Surely the humans didn't enter those waters. Human marine biologists regularly dive into the ocean to study sea life, Taemin explained. We use special equipment to breathe underwater and swim alongside the creatures that live there. Swim alongside them. The chamber fell completely silent except for the sound of several delegates breathing heavily. Some of our most important research happens in the water, Sora added, gently placing the tarantula back in its container. Humans are natural swimmers, so we feel comfortable in aquatic environments. Natural swimmers. In waters filled with predators. Thexvar looked around the chamber and saw his own shock reflected in every alien face. What kinds of creatures do you encounter during these swimming expeditions? Elder Vexmiran asked, his voice barely steady. Oh, all sorts, Sora said with enthusiasm. Dolphins, whales, sea turtles, various fish species. Sometimes sharks, of course, but they're usually not interested in humans. Usually not interested. The qualifier hung in the air like a death sentence. Sharks? Whispered Ambassador Q Flick. Magnificent predators, Daeyun said, calling up new holographic images. Some species can grow over 6 meters long. They have incredible sensory systems and have survived virtually unchanged for millions of years. Humans find them absolutely fascinating. The hologram showed a massive creature with rows of razor-sharp teeth gliding through the water with deadly grace. Its black eyes seemed to stare directly at the terrified audience. And you swim with these sharks? Commander Krikstal asked. When we're lucky enough to encounter them, yes, Sora replied. It's always exciting to observe them in their natural habitat. Of course, we're respectful of their space and behavior patterns, respectful of their space, as if the massive predators were neighbors to be polite to rather than threats to be avoided. This is all very educational, Thexvar managed, but perhaps we should discuss the practical applications of your research methods. Absolutely, Hyunwoo said, speaking for the first time since the demonstration began. Human biological research has led to countless advances in medicine, technology, and environmental management. Our close relationship with Earth's wildlife has been essential to our development. Close relationship, essential to development. Thexvar began to understand that humanity's terrifying behavior wasn't an aberration. It was fundamental to who they were as a species. For example, Daewon said, studying snake venom has led to important medical treatments. Spider silk properties have inspired new materials. Shark skin has influenced underwater vehicle design. We learn from the creatures we share our world with. Learn from them. Share their world with them. These phrases would have sounded insane coming from any other species, but the humans said them with complete sincerity. The key to human success, Taemin added, has always been adaptation and cooperation. We don't try to eliminate the dangerous aspects of our environment. We learn to work with them, not avoid them, not contain them, not destroy them. Work with them. Thexvar looked around the chamber one more time. Of the original 43 delegates, only about 20 remained. Those who stayed were gripping their chairs, their faces pale with shock and fear. The security teams looked like they were preparing for a battle that they couldn't understand and didn't know how to fight. And in the center of it all, 4 humans stood calmly explaining how they had built their entire civilization around the principle of coexisting with creatures that could kill them. The revelation was complete. The galaxy had encountered a species that didn't just survive on a death world, they had embraced it so completely that they couldn't imagine living any other way. They found beauty in predators, wisdom in venomous creatures, and companionship in things that would give most species nightmares. As the demonstration continued, one thought kept echoing through Thexvar's mind. If these are the gentle creatures humans call friends, what do they consider truly dangerous? He was beginning to suspect that the galaxy was about to find out, and that the answer would change everything. The emergency session began 3 hours after the human demonstration ended. The council chamber had been cleared of all non-essential personnel, and medical teams were still treating delegates who had suffered panic attacks during the presentation. The remaining council members sat in a rough circle, their faces showing various expressions of shock, confusion, and barely controlled fear. Elder Vex Mirren called the session to order with a shaking voice. We need to discuss what we witnessed today. The implications of human behavior require immediate analysis. Ambassador Q-Flick was the first to speak. They keep predators as companions. They swim with creatures that could devour them. They study venomous animals for pleasure. How is this possible? More importantly, added Commander Crixtall, what does this tell us about humans themselves? No species develops this kind of behavior without evolutionary pressure. Thexvar had been thinking about the same question. I've been reviewing our intelligence reports about Earth. The patterns are becoming clear, but they're unlike anything in our databases. He activated the chamber's main display, showing a compilation of Earth data. Every environment on their world presents lethal challenges, extreme weather, dangerous geology, and predators at every level of the ecosystem. But humans didn't just adapt to survive this. They learned to thrive alongside it. The display showed images of human cities built in impossible locations. Settlements near active volcanoes, coastal communities that regularly faced massive storms, mountain towns perched on unstable slopes, agricultural areas where deadly wildlife was common. Look at their urban planning, Thexvar continued. They don't build walls to keep dangerous animals out. They create parks and reserves to keep them close. They study them, protect them, and in many cases, invite them into their living spaces. Ambassador Krellnoth leaned forward. But why? What evolutionary advantage could this possibly provide? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Melthon, the Council's chief xenobiologist, had been quietly analyzing the human data during the demonstration. Now she stood with the expression of growing understanding. They're not trying to dominate their environment, she said slowly. They're trying to understand it. Every dangerous creature they study teaches them something new about survival, adaptation, or biological processes. They've turned coexistence with predators into a survival strategy. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. These humans hadn't just survived on a death world, they had turned the death world itself into their greatest teacher. But the psychological effects, protested Ambassador Q-Flick. Living under constant threat should create a paranoid, aggressive species. These humans seem almost cheerful about it. Dr. Melthon nodded. That's the most remarkable part. Instead of developing fear-based responses, they developed curiosity-based responses. When they encounter something dangerous, their first instinct isn't to flee or fight. It's to study and understand. Thexvar thought about Sora's obvious delight when handling the snake and tarantula. The human hadn't shown any signs of stress or caution. If anything, she had seemed more relaxed with the predators than without them. There's something else, Dr. Melthon continued. I've been analyzing their biological data. Human stress responses are remarkably controlled. Their fight-or-flight reflexes are present but heavily modulated by cognitive processes. They've literally evolved to think their way through dangerous situations instead of just reacting. Elder Vexamiran shook his head slowly. So we're dealing with a species that has spent millions of years learning to outsmart predators instead of hiding from them. It explains their technology, Commander Krixtal added. They don't build for maximum protection. They build for adaptability and learning. Their ships are designed to explore, not just to survive. Meanwhile, in the human quarters on the other side of the station, a very different conversation was taking place. The four humans sat around a small table, reviewing recordings of the demonstration with growing confusion. "Did you see how they reacted to the snake?" Sora asked, replaying a section of video. Ambassador Kuflik looked like he was going to faint. Daun frowned at her tablet. "I've been running analysis on the Galactic Biological Database. Do you know what the most dangerous predator is on the most hostile world in Coalition space?" "Something terrible, I imagine," Taman replied. "It's roughly equivalent to what we'd classify as a mildly venomous spider, about the size of a human thumb. And it's considered so dangerous that entire planetary populations relocate when one is spotted." The four humans stared at each other in growing understanding. "Oh," Hyunwoo said quietly. "Oh no. We may have made a serious mistake." "You think they were scared of our demonstration specimens?" Sora asked. "I think," Daun said slowly, "we just showed them creatures that are orders of magnitude more dangerous than anything in their experience. To them, we didn't demonstrate scientific methods. We demonstrated casual interaction with biological weapons of mass destruction." Taemin pulled up the recordings of the alien reactions. "Look at their body language. Classic predator response. Behavior. They weren't confused or curious. They were terrified. But we tried to choose the most harmless examples," Sora protested. "Garden snakes and pet tarantulas are completely safe. Safe by Earth standards," Hyunwoo corrected. "Not safe by galactic standards. We've been thinking about this wrong. It's not that they don't understand our science. They don't understand how we can exist at all." Back in the council chamber, Dr. Melthon was reaching similar conclusions. "I've been comparing human specimens to our threat assessment scales. That snake they showed us? It would be classified as a Class 7 biological hazard. The arthropod was Class 8. "Class 8, Elder Vexamiran repeated. "We evacuate entire space stations for Class 5 hazards, and the human handling it called it beautiful and gentle," Ambassador Krelnoth added. "What does that tell us about human threat perception?" Thexvar felt a chill run down his spine. "It tells us that their entire species operates on a threat scale that's completely different from ours. What we consider lethal, they consider normal. What we consider normal, they probably consider perfectly harmless." Dr. Melthan nodded grimly. "I ran some calculations based on their biological data. If we were to classify humans themselves using our standard threat assessment protocols—" She paused, clearly uncomfortable with the results. "What classification would they receive?" Elder Vexamiran asked. "Class 12, Dr. Melthon whispered. "Possibly higher. They're walking biological anomalies. By galactic standards, they shouldn't exist." The chamber fell into stunned silence. Class 12 was theoretical, a rating reserved for planet-killing organisms that existed only in computer simulations. "But they're not aggressive," Ambassador Kuflik protested weakly. "They seem nice." "That's what makes them so remarkable," Dr. Melthan replied. They have all the biological markers of an apex predator species, but they've developed social structures based on cooperation and learning rather than dominance and territory. Thexvar stood up slowly. Which brings us to the real question. What do we do with this information? We're dealing with a species that casually coexists with creatures that could devastate our worlds, and they want to be our allies. The question isn't whether they're dangerous, Elder Vex Mirren said thoughtfully. The question is whether they realize how dangerous they are. And based on today's demonstration, I don't think they do. Commander Krixtal leaned back in his chair. So we have a species of planet-killing apex predators who think they're perfectly normal and just want to be friends. Yes, Dr. Melthan confirmed. And they're genuinely confused about why everyone seems nervous around them. The irony was almost too much to process. The most terrifying species the galaxy had ever encountered was also the most friendly and well-intentioned. They had accidentally terrified an entire galactic civilization simply by being themselves. Recommendations? Elder Vex Mirren asked. Fexvar took a deep breath. We need to be very, very careful not to let them know how terrified we are. If they realize the effect they have on other species, it could change their entire approach to galactic relations. Agreed, Dr. Melthan said. Right now, they think they're just another species seeking friendship and cooperation. We need to keep it that way. And we absolutely cannot let them demonstrate any more of their harmless specimens, Ambassador Q-Flick added with a shudder. As the council session continued, none of them realized that their entire understanding of the situation was about to change again. Because the humans had only showed them the creatures they considered safe for children, they hadn't even mentioned the ones they found truly interesting yet. 2 weeks later, the Galactic Coalition reached a decision that would reshape interstellar politics for generations to come. The vote was unanimous, though the reasoning behind it would have surprised the humans who inspired it. Elder Vex Mirren stood before the full assembly, his voice carrying across the vast chamber to delegates from hundreds of worlds. After extensive deliberation, the Coalition formally invites humanity to join as full members with immediate access to our most advanced technologies and defense systems. In the human quarters, Hyunwoo received the news with surprised gratitude. That's incredibly generous, he told Da-un and the others. Most species have to go through decades of provisional membership. What he didn't know was that the Coalition's real reasoning had nothing to do with generosity. In their classified sessions, the truth was far more complex and terrifying. We need them on our side, Thexvar had argued during the final vote. Not because we fear them, but because of what might happen if they ever encounter a real threat. Right now, they think giant predators and venomous creatures are normal. What happens when they meet something that actually is dangerous by their standards? The implications had kept the entire council awake for nights. If humans considered Class 8 biological hazards to be gentle pets, what would they classify as truly dangerous? And more importantly, what would their response be if they ever encountered genuine threats to their survival? Dr. Melthan had provided the most chilling analysis. Based on their evolutionary history, humans respond to existential threats by becoming more efficient, more adaptive, and more cooperative. They don't break under pressure, they evolve. If they ever faced something that genuinely threatened them, they would probably develop countermeasures that would terrify the rest of the galaxy. The Coalition had decided that humanity needed to be integrated into galactic society as quickly as possible, surrounded by allies and given access to peaceful outlets for their remarkable capabilities. The alternative, leaving them isolated until they encountered a real crisis, was too dangerous to consider. Meanwhile, the humans continued to be confused by the level of enthusiasm their membership was receiving. When Sora suggested hosting another educational presentation about Earth's marine life, the response was immediate and overwhelming. "That's very kind," Elder Vex Mirren had said quickly, "but perhaps we could focus on other aspects of human science. Your theoretical work in physics, perhaps, or mathematics." Sora had looked disappointed. "But we brought such interesting specimens. There's this fascinating octopus species that can change color and shape, and some lovely jellyfish that are practically transparent." The mere mention of jellyfish had caused 3 delegates to excuse themselves from the meeting. Humans kept creatures that were transparent and could change shape. The espionage implications alone were terrifying. As the integration process began, certain policies were quietly put in place. Human scientific demonstrations required prior approval from a special committee. Human visitors were assigned cultural liaisons, whose real job was to monitor for any mention of additional Earth creatures. And most importantly, humans were immediately recruited for the Coalition's new Biological Crisis Response Division. "We'd like to put your expertise to good use," Commander Crixtall explained to a pleased Hyun-woo. "Your species has unique experience with hostile biological environments." What he didn't mention was that the division's real purpose was to ensure that humans would be the first responders to any biological threats in the galaxy. The logic was simple. If something was dangerous enough to harm humans, it was probably dangerous enough to sterilize entire star systems. Better to have them deal with it before anyone else got involved. The first joint mission came sooner than expected. A mining colony in the Kepler sector had discovered what appeared to be dormant biological material in deep excavations. When preliminary scans showed signs of potential activity, the colony had evacuated and called for help. The Coalition's response was swift and telling. Instead of sending their elite biological containment teams, they sent the humans. This seems like an excellent opportunity for cross-cultural cooperation, Elder Vex Mirren explained to a delighted Hyun-woo. "Your people's experience with diverse life forms makes you ideal for this mission." Sora practically bounced with excitement when she heard about the assignment. Dormant biological material from an unknown ecosystem? This could be the discovery of the century. Da-Yun was equally enthusiastic. "Think of what we could learn about parallel evolution and adaptation strategies." Tai-Min began preparing equipment lists with the kind of thorough attention that other species reserved for military operations. "We'll need full environmental suits, sample collection gear, and portable laboratory setups." To the humans, this was a dream assignment. To the rest of the galaxy, it was a test. If the mysterious biological material was dangerous enough to threaten humans, then the Coalition would know they were dealing with something that could potentially end civilization. The mission launched 3 days later with a mixed crew. The humans comprised the primary research team, while alien specialists provided support and observed from what they considered a safe distance. The ship was equipped with enough firepower to sterilize a small moon, though the humans assumed it was just standard precautionary equipment. When they reached the mining colony, the scale of the discovery became clear. The biological material wasn't just dormant, it was vast. Underground formations stretched for kilometers, all showing signs of organized structure and potential consciousness. "This is incredible," Sora breathed, studying the preliminary scans. "It's like an entire ecosystem evolved underground and then went into hibernation." "The complexity is amazing," Da-Yun added. "Look at these neural pathway analogs. Whatever this is, it's been thinking." While the humans marveled at the scientific opportunity, their alien colleagues watched in growing horror. The biological, Formation was easily the most dangerous thing any of them had ever encountered. It showed signs of intelligence, vast size, and unknown capabilities. By every standard protocol, they should have evacuated the entire sector and called in planetary sterilization teams. Instead, they watched the humans prepare to go down and make direct contact. "Shouldn't we establish communication protocols first?" suggested the Pelian science officer nervously. "Good idea," Hyun-woo agreed. "So-Ra, what's your assessment of safe contact procedures?" So-Ra consulted her instruments and smiled. "Based on the preliminary data, I'd say standard biological survey protocols should work fine. We'll start with passive observation, then move to gentle interaction if it seems receptive. Gentle interaction. With a potentially conscious biological formation the size of a city." The alien crew members exchanged looks of pure terror, but none of them dared to object. If the humans thought it was safe, then by definition it probably was. Their threat assessment capabilities had been thoroughly established. The descent to the underground formation went smoothly. The humans explored the massive biological structures with their characteristic mix of scientific curiosity and casual confidence. They took samples, made recordings, and even attempted basic communication protocols. And slowly, carefully, the ancient intelligence began to respond. What followed was first contact with a species that had been dormant for millions of years, waiting for the right conditions to awaken. The humans approached it with the same patient, respectful attitude they used with Earth's wildlife. They offered information about themselves, shared mathematical concepts, and gradually established a basic communication framework. Within hours, they had achieved something that would have taken other species months or years to accomplish. The ancient intelligence was peaceful, curious, and eager to learn about the galaxy that had developed while it slept. The mission was declared a complete success. The humans had made contact with a new form of life, established peaceful relations, and opened the door to incredible scientific opportunities. They returned to the coalition as heroes, praised for their remarkable diplomatic and scientific skills. What they didn't realize was that they had just solved the galaxy's worst nightmare scenario with the same casual competence they brought to everything else. The alien crew members filed reports that would be classified at the highest levels for centuries. Recommend immediate expansion of human integration into all crisis response protocols, Commander Krickstall wrote in his final report. Human approach to dangerous biological contact appears to be universally successful. Suggest establishing humans as primary first contact specialists for all unknown biological entities. Additional recommendation, he added in a private note, to Elder Vex Mirren. Under no circumstances should humans be informed of the actual threat levels they routinely handle. Their continued belief that they are dealing with normal scientific challenges appears to be essential to their effectiveness. As the years passed, humanity settled into their role as the galaxy's biological crisis specialists, without ever realizing that was what they had become. They thought they were just sharing their love of scientific discovery with their new alien friends. The rest of the galaxy knew better. They had witnessed a species that could look at the universe's most terrifying threats and see opportunities for learning.